Good afternoon. My name is Tizita Safa, and I'm here with Multimedia Resource and Training Institute and Ethio Youth Media. Today we have Councilmember Tim Burgess, who's been a council member in the city of Seattle since 2007. Today we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Burgess. Is it okay if I call you that?
You can call me that, or you can call me Tim.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah,
I'll
Tim
call
is
you
good.
Tim.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. So Tim and I are going to have a quick conversation just to get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
This is an exciting time of elections, as we know.
Yes.
And we feel really strongly that getting information out to all voters and all of the public is really important, because we really believe that civic engagement is critical to the well-being of our cities.
Absolutely true.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So if you can give us a quick, maybe biography, and I'll fill in the holes from what I read in case you forget.
Okay. So I'm a Seattle native. I grew up here, and my wife and I raised our 3 daughters here. I started right out of high school as a radio journalist in Seattle, covering city government and the region. That was a time of pretty intense corruption in city government, so I covered a lot of corruption trials.
Can you give me a quick little, like a time period and maybe
So this
one little example
Yeah,
of what might have been happening?
Yep, so this is the late 1960s.
Okay.
And in 1970, we elected a new King County prosecuting attorney, Christopher Bailey. And we also elected a new mayor. And there was massive corruption in city government. And it involved the police, that the police officers walking beats in the city were kind of the bagmen who collected money from illegal vice operations, gambling, alcohol, prostitution, shared that money in the police department and passed it up to elected officials. And so I covered those trials, and I covered that scandal.
Wow.
I then joined the police department because the new mayor wanted to reform city government and the police department, and I thought that would be good. And someone in my early 20s, I thought that would be exciting. So I spent about 8 years at the police department on the street as a patrol officer and also as a detective. And I'm glad I did that. That gave me a perspective of what it's like in the city where a lot of people don't go. And I got to see things that I'd never been exposed to. I saw the effect of a criminal justice system that was not justly and fairly dealing with people. I saw the effects of racism and poverty in our city. And then I decided I was going to solve global poverty, and I went to work for an international NGO and worked mostly in East Africa and South Asia. Unfortunately, I did not solve global poverty, but that was an amazing, eye-opening experience for me, and I saw the effects of systemic injustice and corruption and oppression that kept people down. I came back to the United States, and I opened a marketing communications business and ran that for about 20 years, and then that's when I decided to run for the city council in 2007. And I will say that all of my previous life experiences have prepared me for this job. This is the most fulfilling job because I get to do things that actually directly impact people's lives and hopefully make life better for the people of Seattle, and I really enjoy doing that.
Well, talk about not having just the one career track when they say that. How many careers do we go? Career changes,
I'm
I
on
think
my
now
fifth.
say 4 or 5
Yeah, I'm
career
on my
changes
fifth,
nowadays. Yeah.
But they've all built on each other, and so I
seems like
really
it,
I feel very fortunate to have had all those various experiences. I think they prepared me better to this work than perhaps otherwise. So.
It makes me think about the role of a city council member, and your chair now, correct,
Yes,
for the
yes.
2014-2015 year.
Yes.
So I imagine it requires a lot of listening.
It requires listening out in the community, in
Yeah.
our neighborhoods, but among my colleagues as well.
Okay.
Because one of the jobs of the council president is to make sure that, council members can advance their legislation, and my job is to measure whether something has support and make sure it gets moving forward. And so I do a lot of hand-holding and listening. which is critically important.
Do you feel that in this role you get to hear the voices of many different community members, or is it predominantly particular groups?
I think it's everybody. We have to be proactive about that, though, because if we just sat in our offices at City Hall, we would hear from those who are most organized, those who maybe have professional lobbyists, or who are used to coming to City Hall and meeting with council members and such. But that's why we go out a lot. And you can go to my website at seattle.gov, and I post a map of all the meetings I have in the city. And so you can see these little dots of, where I've been all over the city. And I try to make sure that I get everywhere in the city. And we spend a lot of time, and I know my colleagues do as well, out meeting with community groups, listening to neighbors, doing little walking tours of our little business communities throughout the city, meeting with neighborhood groups.
I think that's excellent. And today you've showed that by coming to our sweet studio.
Oh, I'm very happy to do this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I was going to ask you about how you entered politics, but it seems like one step led into the next, and it's not just politics. It seems like on a city council level where we might, or perhaps I'm wrong, maybe I don't understand politics enough to know the roles that are played, but why city council and not perhaps Congress or the Senate or
well, would you want to
legislation?
work in Washington, D.C.? I think
Not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably
exactly,
not.
Yeah.
Not in today's climate, for sure. I don't know what climate it would have been easy, but
Yeah. So I think local government, municipal government, that's the government that touches the people the most. You call 911, the government comes, whether it's the fire department or the police department or the public health department or whatever. You need a pothole fixed or repaired, it's city government. You want clean water, it's city government. Turn on the light switch and the electricity's there, it's city government. So I think municipal government is in most direct contact with the people, and that's what I enjoy. And I think also in our country, because of the gridlock in Washington, D.C., and frankly, even in Olympia, our state capital, I think it's local governments that can lead the way. And Seattle has certainly done that. We did that with our $15 minimum wage. We did that the year before with paid sick leave so that every worker in our city can care for themselves and their family. We've done that certainly with preschool last year, and an amazing progressive step for our kids and our families by beginning to offer universal preschool. So this is where the action is, at the local level. And as I said earlier, I think this is where we can most impact people's lives, is here at the local level. So I'm very happy to be serving at the local level. I have no ambition to go to any of those other.
So you brought up preschool, and I know that you're currently on the Education and Governance Committee.
Yes.
What are some of the initiatives that we can look forward to that voters will be responsible for implementing or not?
Yeah. So I was the lead architect of the CITAC preschool program, which was adopted a year ago by Seattle voters. And so we're just implementing that now. So we have 15 classrooms today, and it's phased in over 4 years. And by year 4, we'll have 100 classrooms. And then we'll face a big decision, because we've only got funding for the first 4 years. And what will we do then to expand that program and make it truly universal? And there's about 12,000 kids ages 3 and 4 in Seattle today. So
Who are participating,
no,
or who
total
who
number of
should
kids
be
who
able to
are 3 and
access
4
that?
years age.
Okay, got it.
That's right, 3 and 4. So by the end of that 4th year, we're going to have what's the next step. And so that's a big issue that we want to stay engaged with the community on. King County has a measure on this ballot, and just next week, Best Starts for Kids.
I was going to ask you about
Which
that,
is,
yeah.
it's different than the preschool program, but it's very similar in that it's designed to give every child in King County a fair and strong start, and to make sure that when they are age 5 and ready to enter kindergarten, they've had good medical care and health care, they've had good opportunities for learning, whether that's preschool or something else. It's going to fund a lot of home visitation programs for especially low-income families, but others as well. So those are good steps that we can take as we look toward the future and how we're going to make sure that Seattle is a place of inclusiveness and opportunity for all. That's what's really key, is to make sure we have a level playing field so everyone can have opportunity for success in our city, whether it's a newborn baby or it's a 15-year-old or a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old who lives in our city.
Well, I have been following up on Best Starts, and I love that it goes beyond the.
Yes.
I think it's to 24.
To 24.
From my understanding,
yes.
yeah.
Its primarily focus is 0 to 5
Yeah.
because we know that's so important,
Yeah.
but it goes up to age 20. It goes up to age 24.
Yeah, which is great for those of us who do youth development work, who know that once you turn 18, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have the keys to life and
Yeah,
success
that's right.
and access to all the things that make adulthood easy, which.
Or difficult.
Or
both.
I would say a little more on the
Life is complicated.
latter side.
Yeah,
exactly,
that's right.
exactly. But it's still beautiful, I think.
Much.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have enough, I think, so much experience that maybe you can, as a police officer, as an educator, as a global worker, as a journalist, I just want to bring a little bit of attention to what we've been recently seeing in the news of the young lady who was, I'm going to call it assault because that's what it looks like. Just seeing the video, I understand discipline, but as an educator, I don't understand that form of discipline at all.
Are you referring to the South Carolina
Richland school district?
Yep.
Where
tragic, absolutely tragic.
Yeah, so
and very inappropriate.
It just brought up so many questions in my mind when I saw it. Is one, why do we have police in our schools? When I was growing up, and I grew up in Michigan, we had security, which was very beneficial. They had deep interactions with the students, which listening to the sheriff. Say that they also do, the deputies there also do. Perhaps my perspective, maybe I'm too close to it being a mother of teenagers, but if you can just speak to it a little bit, because my mind is completely boggled.
Right. So, again, I only know about that case, what you know and what we've seen on television and in the newspaper. I think that the real issue here is layered. So you have the issue of race.
Yeah.
You have the issue of the police being present in a school building. You have the actions of that particular police officer in that particular situation. And the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the importance of that, and why we is because, unfortunately, in America, we have a history of racism and a history of structural and institutional evils that have worked to keep a particular group, in this case African Americans, down. Yeah. And we can trace that all the way back to slavery and the results of slavery. And a lot of Americans think slavery ended when President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery continued in this country into the 1950s. Right. And when you read about that and realize that, unfortunately, it was the police who were the enforcers of that, and then you get into all the Jim Crow laws and all of that, the police, unfortunately, became the enforcers of these systems of oppression. Yeah. And that's why it's important to have these conversations, and that's why it's important that the police have these conversations. And thankfully, in Seattle, most of our police officers do a good job and want to do a good job. But we have our problems here, too, as well. Yeah. And those need to be talked about and dealt with, and we shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah. I think it's always unfortunate when such issues arise that it becomes an us versus them. And I think it was actually the FBI. It's us. Yeah. It is us, absolutely. The FBI, whoever was the agent that did the review on this Richland case, and perhaps I'm wrong, perhaps it wasn't him, but somebody in the FBI ended up looking at a lot of the cases within the issues of that have been coming up around police conduct, and basically said that the push ends up being where we both have to stop pushing, because on the one hand it becomes either just a Black Lives issue or just a police issue, so an us versus them. Sorry, my paraphrasing is
That's
not
okay.
very strong, but
I
I think
get your
you
point,
get
yeah.
what I'm trying to say. And it just was really disappointing, because once again he drew the line. And my problem, and going back to this young child, is however inappropriately she behaved, she's not the one with adult training, life skills
Right.
training. She's not the one with just all the training that a police officer would get, you know, and somebody in a place of authority, be they police or any other role. And so I really think it's dangerous to do that. And we've been having conversations within our own communities just so that we can build that bridge to say what is happening here and why is it happening. And I know right now, you know, within Seattle Police Department, there's one East African police officer. That's for the first time ever. So, you know, we see a lot of disparities for all kinds of reasons.
I have a proposal to address that, by the way.
Okay.
So to be a Seattle police officer or a firefighter in the state of Washington anywhere, you have to be an American citizen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
And I am suggesting that we go to the state legislature in January and ask them to modify that so that someone who is documented and is here legally and has a work permit but are not yet a citizen could apply to be in the public safety career as a firefighter or as a police officer. And I've talked to many young men and women in our immigrant community who would love those jobs. And they're great jobs. And that might be a way to further diversify our police force.
I had no idea that
is
that
to
was a
get rid of that
stipulation.
barrier. So it's been interesting to have conversations around that topic. But I want to go back to a point you made about the us versus them. It's not. I get around, as we were talking earlier, I get around the city a lot. I talk to a lot of communities all over the city. Everybody wants a professional police force that's fair and effective. No one has ever said to me, take all the police out of our community. Never. So we all need the police, but we need them to be what they are supposed to be, which are the protectors of our city, the guardians of our neighborhoods and our people, and to do that in a constitutional way that's fair and professional. And yes, their job is tough, and I'm the first to acknowledge that. But that is not an excuse for misconduct.
Thank you.
And that's why I like Kathy O'Toole so much, our new chief of police. She gets that, and she's not afraid to make tough decisions. She's fired police officers since she's become the chief about 1.5 years ago, and she's disciplined many others. So it's important to have the kind of city leadership that I think we have now in Mayor Murray and Chief O'Toole that are going to do the right thing and make sure that we have the best possible police department possible, because all of our citizens want that.
Would it be kind of an idealistic thing for me to ask, maybe 5-10 years from now, if you had a vision for what that relationship would look like based on the implementations that are set in place?
Sure. I think in 5 years or 10 years, we'll have a much more diverse police force that is reflective of the city population. I think we will have a force where officers truly understand the significance of the power and the authority that we've given them, the sacred trust and honor that we place in them, and from both a constitutional perspective, but also just from a human relations perspective. And they'll do their jobs really, really well, and the people of Seattle will be proud of their police force.
Hopefully that will be the case, because that's what we're all working towards. So another one of the conversations we've been having within our community is access to fair housing. Of course, Seattle has just multiplied.
It's
booming. And of course, that's not just to say Seattle, because it affects all the other cities within. And
I'm very grateful for the economic power of this region and this city. It's certainly better than the opposite would be. But, Mayor Murray has sent a series of recommendations to the City Council that we're now considering that are going to fundamentally change how we deal with affordable housing in our city. And what's most important about that, there's tons of details there that we could talk about, but what's most important is for the first time in our city's history, we have labor unions and social justice groups and affordable housing advocates and providers and landlords and developers and business community all aligned and on the same page and headed in the same direction. That is huge.
That is huge.
And so we're going to change fundamentally how we approach affordable housing. We've already passed the mandatory commercial affordable housing fee, mitigation fee.
Okay, that passed.
That passed.
Okay.
That's in effect. And we will soon deal with the residential side, probably just after the first of the year, which will require that every multifamily building, like an apartment building that's built in Seattle, will set aside a certain number of units that are affordable. So you've always had to build in compliance with the building code and the life safety codes. Now you're going to have to meet the affordable housing code.
Yeah. Okay.
First time in Seattle.
Great.
And that's going to create, over the next 10 years, 20,000 units of affordable housing, 6,000 at the low end of affordability for those with incomes of 60% of area median income or less.
Okay. And I
Huge,
know that
huge move.
that is a huge
Yeah.
move. And I know that's been, Yesler Terrace redevelopment has been on the forefront of that kind
Yes,
of
yes.
a move.
And, you know, a lot of people are divided over Yesler Terrace. But when Yesler Terrace is done, we'll have 3 times as many low-income units there than we have today. And
at various stages, though,
at-
right?
yes,
Levels of
at the lowest levels.
At the lowest
At the
levels.
lowest levels. So I went to the opening of the first new multifamily building there, and those families are delighted.
Really?
Because
It's already open?
It's open, and they're
Wow.
there. It's right there at the corner of 14th and Yesler.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And
Wow.
they've got much better
That
housing.
landscape has changed
Yes.
dramatically.
Yes. So it's good progress for the
Okay.
city.
Well, it'll be exciting to see, how that continues to evolve. And I also have been hearing in the news that for small business owners as well, that there are proposals for lease caps or the.
So that's right. A couple of candidates who are running for the city council have proposed various strategies to deal with small businesses, and because they experience rent increases as
Absolutely.
well, not just residential units.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with the argument that if it's only, big box stores that can afford these, and it really is not Seattle anymore.
That's right.
It
That's
kind
right.
of really
Yep.
changes the charm and the uniqueness of it. Otherwise, why don't we just live in any other city anymore?
That's right. And for those of us who grew up here, we've seen that change.
Yeah.
And some of that change is good.
Yeah.
But when we have the displacement that we've been having, that's where it causes real problems.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we do here is really largely youth and community development through the use of media, empowering young people and elders as well to come and use it to communicate, to build that bridge again. One of the things that we see, I'm not speaking just for this, but just in my professional experience, is I want to know how come programs such as these that have measurable results don't end up getting funded, and they end up getting, pushed down, and people, everyday people who, I'm talking about Seattle Youth Violence Prevention, I'm talking about, Ground Up Organics, all kinds of great different organizations, small grassroots organizations. Got Green was like that. Now they've kind of risen up the ladder a little bit, that don't get funded. It's very confusing to me. And Seattle has some phenomenal youth programs, but again, they're all struggling to stay afloat. And I feel like this is that is an injustice, because if we're trying to resolve some of these issues that we're talking about, community issues, policing issues, housing issues, access issues, equity issues, how is it that we're not supporting those who are doing this work?
So we support a lot, and we spend millions of dollars a year on youth and empowerment programs. I can't answer why a specific program doesn't get funded.
Yeah, those are just examples, but I have plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of organizations that apply every year for city funding, and we don't fund everybody.
Right.
There are processes that people go through to how they get funded, but what the council does is we will allocate budget, and we will set the policy and the framework and what we want to have measured for outcomes. It's about who gets funded or who doesn't get
And
funded.
outside of funding too, maybe just a little plug is I just would recommend, however that funding goes, is to also support and continued training, continued education, and just because I see such amazing work right next door, some amazing work being done.
That's great.
And it's, it makes me so proud, it makes me so happy, but I also want to see it continued. I think that youth employment is really important, and we see that as a major success. For every youth that we have come in, I'm volunteering here, whereas, when we bring youth in, we make sure that we're hiring them because we want them to learn, professional skills. We want them to be personally and professionally sound, but we also want to be supported in doing that work as well. We've all heard of the volunteer burnout, which is really unfortunate, and I'm sure you've been in those shoes as well over the years. But so that if that's something that you can take with you, and
I know Mayor Murray this past summer increased the summer youth employment program that the city runs from approximately 500 kids to 2,000.
Yes, that was huge.
But one of our cities that we're often compared with, Boston, has over 10,000 kids involved in their program. So we've got work to do, that's for sure.
Great. Well, I'm happy to see those increases, and I definitely look forward to seeing it continue. So do you have any final thoughts besides make sure to vote?
Yeah, everybody should vote. Even if you don't vote for me, you should vote.
Yes.
But, of course, people should vote
Please
for me,
vote.
too. Yeah. But we live in a great city, and this city has produced some remarkable people, and we can continue to do that well into the future. We're very blessed here.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
And we will definitely come and sit in to council meetings. Those
Absolutely.
are open, correct?
They are. And
Awesome.
you can come down and do job shadows or whatever we can do to help. We're happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. And definitely for the youth, tell me the youth council's name.
The Seattle Youth Commission.
Youth Commission.
That's right.
Yeah, so please pay attention to that online on the website, seattle.gov.
Yes.
And sign up. I've seen some amazing things happen through that, and I definitely promote that continued
And the application
interaction.
period for that is later in late winter, early spring, so that kids that apply then are in the Youth Commission the following school year.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
well,
it's
thank
great.
you for all your good work.
Thank you.
And continued success to
Thank
you.
you very much.
And for our city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm City Council President Tim Burgess. Here at MMRTI, this is a great place to communicate with various sections of our city and communities in Seattle. Take advantage of the opportunities here.